Okay. So now I'm going to make it a little more challenging. But I'm not really worried about you because I think you'll be able to answer this question. Together, we can work on it together and I'll help you out, but I think you're going to have a lot of insight, hopefully. So I have this, my array, which is global. And here I'm going to have a loop. So I'm going to say int I for I equals to 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus. Let me move this to the left. And then what I want to do here is something that I did, I think, before, which is my array I is equal to I plus, or rather multiplied by 2. Let's say let's say I plus 2 for now. Okay. So when we execute this code, my array 0 is going to be 2. My array 1 is going to be, 3. My array 2 is going to be 4. I'm not going to list all of them, but that's what's going to happen. So after the code is executed, that's what's going to happen. So now we're going to write that in MIPS. Okay. So where do we start? Can someone start? All right. So I'm going to actually, so I see something here. I see dot data, and then we allocate space, my array dot space 5 multiplied by 4, 20. That's perfect. So just to speed things up a little bit, I'm going to write the logic for the loop, and I'll let you think about this one. So when I see code in C that looks like this, and when let's say I need to do that, I need to convert that to a MIPS, assembly MIPS, I typically actually do the loop, and I don't worry about the loop body. I worry about the loop body after. So I can say add immediate. We can use S0 for I. So I'm gonna put 0 in S0. I'm gonna have a loop label. I don't want to forget about that. And then there's gonna be a branch on equal, but before that, we need to have a set less than, because this is I less than 5. So we can use set less than immediate and then branch on equal. So let's set less than immediate here, and then branch on equal. And then at the end, I'm going to have after. And right before the after, I need to jump to the loop. So I'm just writing the stuff that I know I need to do. And these are easy to start with, in my opinion. And then, of course, I need the increment I plus plus. So I can also add that, add immediate S0, S0, 1. And now let's do the set less than immediate and the branch on equal, and then we can think about the loop body, which is this. This one set less than, I'm going to put the result in T0, and I'm going to check if S0, which is I, is less than 5. And here I can say if it's equal to 0, if T0 is equal to 0, that means if S0 is not less than 5, then I want to go to after. Otherwise, I go sequentially, and then I do everything that I need to do here, and then I increment the control variable, and then I jump to loop, and this is exactly how it should work. Now, let's talk about this one. So here what I'd like to do is I'd like to store, because I'd like to change the array. I'd like to change the RAM. The tricky part about this one is I is a variable. I is going to be different at every iteration. So it's going to be, I cannot do the following. I cannot say, okay, let me put kind of 4, or, let's say I can't put 4 and then use that. It has to be some sort of a loop, and it has to be some sort of maybe accumulator. Maybe I'm just giving you some ideas here. But let me calculate this one first. Let me calculate this value first. So I'm going to say add immediate and I can put it in S1, and I can say S0, 2. So this, right now, this value I plus 2 is really placed in S1 because it's just simply I plus 2. Now, when I store word this value, which is S1, I know that I have to use my array because that's really the place for the label. And right now here, what I'd like to do is in the first iteration, I'd like to have a value, essentially a register that contains the value 0. And then in the next iteration, what should the value of this one be? Think about it. Think about it for a few seconds. In the first iteration, because I is going to be 0, I'd like the value of my register here to be 0 so that I can just have my array. In the second iteration, what should I have the value that is here? What would I like for the value here to be? S0. Well, what is S0 in the second iteration? So Anthony's saying, how about we put S0 here? What is S0 in the second iteration? So at the beginning, S0 is going to be 0. And then, of course, we're going to go do all that check. Then we're going to do this. And then we're going to increment S0 by 1. And then we're going to jump to loop. So in the second iteration, what's the value of S0? One. That's good, Anthony. That's correct. The value of S0 is going to be 1. Is that what we want? And let me here allocate some space. Do you want this to be 1? Do you want the value here to be 1? So again, my array, I'm going to actually copy this, paste it, change the font. I'm going to say my array is pointing to here at the beginning. So when you have my array and 0, then that's good. You can put the first value here. But then you want to take my array and you want to add something to it. You don't want to add 3 to it. You want to add 4 to it. Yeah, in the next iteration, you'd like to add 4 here. And in the iteration after that, you'd like to have my array plus 8. And in the iteration after that, my array plus 12. And then in the iteration after that, my array plus 16. So you would like to put a value here that's going to change. In the first iteration, it'll be 0. In the next iteration, it'll be 4, and then 8, 12, 16. So how can I do that? How can I do that? Create a temp variable. Okay, how do I do that? Like a create a temp variable. Let me create that temp variable before the loop. Let's say add immediate. I'm going to call it T2, and I'm going to give it the value 0. And maybe I should use T2 here. Okay, that's good. So what Katie is suggesting that we create a temp variable like this one, T2, we put a 0 in it. And then right after this line, we can say add immediate T2, 4. So we add 4 to it. So next time we get to this line, T2 is going to be 4. And then the following time we get to this line, T2 is going to be 8. And this is exactly what you want to do. So that is the correct answer. Think about it for a few seconds. See if you have any questions. All right, so this is how you populate values in a global array using a loop. So, I mean, the way I do it is I first start with the loop structure, which is, the loop label, the initialization, the condition, and at the end I would have the after jump loop right before that, and right before that the increment. And this would be the loop body, which I write at the end. In this case, I would have to write code that calculates this value, which is here. And then I need to make sure that I have another register that's going to have the correct value each iteration. So at first it'll be 0, then 4, then 8. Okay, let's see. There's a question. Should this be inside the loop? Oh, that's a good catch. That's a great catch, because otherwise I would have had to add it as a comment. So that's what I like for you guys to do, to kind of find those mistakes. So this should be outside the loop. Thank you so much, Anthony. You don't want, of course, reinitialize the control variable every time, every iteration. That's not going to work. It'll be an infinite loop if you do that. So how about if I have I multiplied by 2? Do you think that you can do that? Or do you think it's difficult? Do you know how to do that without using multiplication? It's not difficult. Let me see. Just add it twice. That's good, Katie. Yeah, that's what you could do. You could just say add S0 S0 like that, and that would be multiplied by 2. How about multiplied by 4? You add that twice again. So you can do this, and then you can add it twice. The reason why I say this, I'm asking about multiplied by 4, because sometimes students decide to use this register S0 to kind of determine this value, instead of starting with a new register and incrementing it by 4 each time. What they say they would want to do is, how about we take S0 and multiply it by 4 and put it in another register and use that register here. And that's okay. You can do that, because in the first iteration, I or S0 is going to be 0, and you want it to be 0. And that's what happens when you multiply it by 4. And then I is going to become 1. You multiply it by 4, it ends up with 4, which is really the number that you want. So in that case, instead of doing this, let's get rid of that. What you could do is you could say, maybe add T2, let's use the same number, and you can add S0 to S0, that's going to multiply by 2, and then you can add T2 is T2, T2. So those two lines are essentially going to multiply S0 by 4 and put the result in T2, and that's what you could use here. That's okay. I mean, you can do that. The first one is actually faster because you only have one line here. This one's going to be a little slower. And then at some point, I'm going to introduce the multiplication command. There's a command that multiplies. All right. So I think what we can do right now, we can stop recording and start a new one. And I can show you, or together we can try to learn how to initialize local arrays. So, or populate local arrays. So right now we're populating global arrays, and we hopefully have mastered this by now. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how you can populate local arrays. So let me stop and start a new one.